How many men out there can honestly say their wife is popular? And I don't mean famous or anything. I'm talking about a woman who has this magnetic energy that draws people, and a woman who walks into a room and people notice. Men notice. That was my wife, Emily. She didn't have a massive online following or a high-powered career, but wherever she went, she just had that presence. You know, the kind that makes heads turn. And believe me, I noticed. We got married in our mid-20s, and now we're pushing 40. We met in college. She was the bubbly, outgoing girl who could light up any room, and I was the quieter, more introverted guy. Opposites attract, right? At first, everything was good, great even. We had that spark. And then we got married, bought a house, had two beautiful daughters. The typical suburban dream. I worked your standard office job. 9 to 5, decent pay, benefits, the whole package. Emily stayed home for the most part, at least when the girls were younger. She'd take on part-time work here and there, mostly just helping out an elderly neighbor or picking up odd jobs when she felt like it. Our marriage, though? It was fine. That's the best way I can describe it, fine. Nothing was wrong per se, but nothing was amazing either. We weren't those couples who are all over each other, but we weren't fighting either. We just kind of existed in this space, raising the kids, paying the bills, making life work. The sex was still happening, but let's be honest, it wasn't like the early days. It was routine like everything else. I guess, looking back, I ignored the signs because they weren't obvious. Not at first. Emily started going out more. Sometimes it was for groceries, sometimes to meet a friend for coffee, or she'd say she was taking a walk. Nothing out of the ordinary, except these little trips got longer. I just ran into so-and-so, she'd say when she got back. Or, the line at the store was crazy. I didn't think much of it. I mean, we've been married for over a decade. I trusted her. She was a good wife, a great mom. Why would I doubt her? But slowly, I started noticing the changes. There were more nights where she'd be out later than usual. More nights where she'd come home, and I'd ask, "How was your day?" And her answer would feel rehearsed, like she had already thought about what she was going to say. Then there were the phone calls. She'd be on her phone a lot more than before, texting and smiling at her screen like a teenager. At first, I thought it was just her keeping in touch with friends or planning some mom's night out. But when I leaned in once, just casually trying to kiss her goodnight, she pulled away saying, "Not now, I'm tired." It stung, but I brushed it off. People get tired. I was tired too. But the phone, it kept pinging, more and more messages, mostly in the evenings when we'd sit on the couch together. I'd be watching TV, and she'd be scrolling, her attention completely absorbed by whatever was on that tiny screen. And it wasn't just the usual social media stuff, it was messages. I started glancing over casually at first, just to see who she was talking to. But she was always quick to close her phone when I got too close. That's when the knot in my stomach started forming, but I kept telling myself, "Nah, it's nothing. You're being paranoid." I didn't realize just how much of an idiot I was until one night. I caught her on the phone late when she thought I was asleep. It was a low, whispered conversation. I couldn't make out much, but I heard enough. Enough to know it wasn't her mother or a friend from work. "You know, I can't right now. He's still awake. Maybe tomorrow." I felt the cold sweat form on my forehead. I wanted to barge in, demand to know who she was talking to, but instead, I just lay there pretending to be asleep, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. Could she be cheating? No, not Emily. She wouldn't do that. Would she? The next morning, everything was back to normal, or at least it seemed that way. She was chipper, getting the kids ready for school, kissing me goodbye as if nothing had happened. But something had shifted. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going on behind my back. I started paying more attention, noticing every small detail, every tiny thing that seemed off. I started asking more questions, subtle at first. "Who were you talking to last night?" Or "Where exactly did you go today?" But she always had an answer ready, like she had rehearsed it. "Oh, just a friend," or "I went for a walk, nothing special." But it was something. It was everything. And then one night it happened. I was cleaning up after dinner, and her phone buzzed on the counter. She was in the other room, so I grabbed it, figuring I'd just hand it to her. But then I saw the name. It wasn't one of her friends or her mom. It was a guy. I didn't recognize the name at first, but something in my gut told me to open the message. And that's when I saw it. The flirty texts, the inside jokes, the winking emojis. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My wife, the mother of my kids, the woman I thought I knew, was having some kind of affair. My hands were shaking as I put the phone back down, trying to act normal as she walked into the kitchen. I couldn't even look at her. Everything was more complicated than I'd thought. For weeks, that feeling in my gut kept growing, gnawing at me, but I couldn't pin it down. I mean, sure, I'd found those texts on her phone, and yeah, they were suspicious, but part of me was still holding out, trying to convince myself that it wasn't what it seemed. One day, we were out shopping, just a regular trip to the store to pick up groceries. Nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. I was pushing the cart while Emily wandered off between the aisles, looking for something. As I turned a corner, I spotted someone out of the corner of my eye. It was a guy I hadn't seen in years, an old friend from back in the day. Let's call him Tom. Tom was standing near the shelves, but there was something strange about the way he was moving, like he was trying to avoid being seen. He was peeking around, ducking behind a display like he didn't want anyone to notice him. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Why would Tom be hiding in a grocery store? Curiosity got the better of me, so I left the cart and walked over to him. "Tom!" I called out. He jumped slightly, but turned and smiled when he saw me. "Oh, hey, long time no see, man." We greeted each other, but something felt off. He was too cheerful, like he was putting on an act. I glanced around to see if Emily had spotted us, but she was off in another aisle, completely unaware. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to make sense of why he was acting so strange. Yeah, I'm good," he said, but his eyes darted around nervously. I actually wanted to talk to you." I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "Not here," he muttered, glancing over his shoulder. "Let's meet later. There's a bar near the strip mall. You know the one. We can talk there. Tonight?" I wasn't sure what to make of it. Tom had always been the outgoing type, never the kind of guy who'd act all jumpy. I hesitated for a moment, not really wanting to get involved in whatever this was. But something in his voice caught my attention. He seemed urgent, and frankly, I was curious. What had happened to him? Why was he acting so strange? "All right," I said, though not entirely willing. "I'll meet you there." That evening, after putting the kids to bed and telling Emily I had some errands to run, I headed to the bar. I found Tom sitting at a corner table, already a beer in front of him. The moment I walked in, I noticed he wasn't the same guy from earlier. The nervousness was gone. He looked more confident, more put together. It was like the grocery store thing never happened. "Glad you made it," he said as I sat down. "I've been thinking about you." "Thinking about me?" I chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I remember our friendship, you know," he said, taking a long sip of his beer. "And I want to help you." I leaned back, confused. "Help me with what?" "Everything's fine, man." He gave me a look, one that told me he knew more than I did. "Listen, I'm not trying to make this awkward, but something's been going on. Something you should know about." Now I was hooked. My stomach tightened as I waited for him to continue. He pulled out a business card and slid it across the table toward me. I glanced down at it. It was for some massage place in town. "Massage studio? What's this got to do with anything?" "I've seen your wife there," he said, his voice low, almost cautious. "Yes, so?" "She goes there sometimes," I replied. "She gets those spa treatments, you know? Facials, massages, the usual stuff. It's nothing new." Tom shook his head. "No, man. I mean, she works there." I stared at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" "She doesn't have any massage training. Why would she be working there?" He let out a sigh, his eyes not leaving mine. "It's not that kind of massage, man. It's a different kind of place." It took a second for his words to sink in. "What do you mean, different?" Tom looked uncomfortable, but he didn't hold back. "I mean, it's a massage parlor, but with extras. You know what I mean? A massage that ends with a little more than just a back rub. It's all under the table, but they've got women working there who do it for cash. I've seen your wife there, and I talked to one of the girls who works there. She said your wife's on a floating schedule, shows up when she can. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My brain couldn't process what he was telling me. My wife, Emily, working in a place like that? No way. It didn't make sense. You're sure it was her? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom nodded. I wouldn't lie to you about something like this. I saw her, and I asked around. It's her? The room felt like it was closing in on me. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my hands felt cold. I didn't know what to do, what to think. Emily? Working there? Why? For money? Was that what all those extra part-time jobs had really been about? I had so many questions, but no answers. I'm sorry, man, Tom said, finishing his drink and standing up. I thought you deserved to know. As I left the bar, I felt like I was walking in a daze. I had no idea what to do with this information. My wife, the mother of my kids, was doing this for money? What the hell was happening to my life? I didn't know what to do. Tom's words kept echoing in my head. My wife, working in a place like that? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, but something stopped me. What if Tom was wrong? What if there was a logical explanation? If I accused her and it turned out to be false, it would blow everything up for no reason. I couldn't risk that, so I made a decision. I wouldn't tell her. Not yet. I needed to find out for myself. The next day, when Emily left for one of her usual errands, I waited. I sat there, staring at the clock, each minute dragging by as I tried to calm the storm of thoughts in my head. After half an hour, I grabbed my keys and headed to the massage place Tom had mentioned. When I walked in, the place seemed normal enough. The receptionist smiled at me like I was just another client. Can I help you? She asked. Yeah, I stammered. Is anyone free for a massage? She looked at the schedule, then nodded. Yes, we have availability. If you'd like to come in and lie down, we'll have someone with you shortly. I followed her instructions, my heart pounding in my chest as I was led to a dimly lit room. The soft hum of spa music played in the background, and the scent of lavender filled the air. I took off my shirt, hesitated for a moment, then undressed completely and lay down on the massage table, face down. What was I doing? I still wasn't sure if I wanted to go through with this. A few minutes later, the door opened, and a woman walked in. But she wasn't who I expected. She was older than me by quite a bit. Actually, probably in her late 50s or early 60s. She said nothing at first, just started rubbing oil on my back, working her hands into the muscles. It was a regular massage, nothing suspicious. I felt a little relieved. So, she said after a few moments, what kind of massage are you looking for today? We have therapeutic, relaxing, or maybe you want something a little more special. I froze for a second. There it was. This was exactly what Tom had been talking about. I cleared my throat, trying to sound casual. Yeah, maybe something more. Without a word, she stopped what she was doing and left the room. My heart was racing now. I wasn't sure what I had just agreed to, but there was no turning back. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and this time, it wasn't the older woman. A much younger woman walked in, probably in her late 20s, wearing tight leggings and a tank top. She smiled, a knowing look in her eyes, and without saying anything, she started the massage. Her hands moved over my body, but this wasn't like the first massage. It was softer, slower, more deliberate. The tension in the room shifted immediately. I won't go into details, but it didn't take long before it became clear that this wasn't just a massage. It ended exactly how I had feared it might, and to my surprise, I didn't stop it. In fact, I went along with it. I let it happen, and as it was happening, I couldn't deny that it felt good. Too good. When it was over, I got dressed in silence. I handed the woman her payment, tipped generously, and walked out the door like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. As I stepped outside, the guilt hit me all at once. I had just betrayed my wife. I did the very thing I feared she was doing to me. I had sunk to that level without even knowing the truth. If Tom was wrong, if my wife wasn't involved in this place, then I had just destroyed something for no reason. I couldn't think straight. The drive home was a blur, my mind racing with a million thoughts. What the hell had I done? And more importantly, what was I going to do next? When I got home, the house was quiet. Emily hadn't returned yet, and the kids were still at school. I sat down at the kitchen table, trying to process everything, my hands shaking slightly as I replayed what had just happened. Was this what Emily was doing behind my back? Or was I just projecting, letting my fears push me into something I shouldn't have done? Either way, I was left with one brutal truth. I wasn't innocent anymore. I sat in that dark room, the dim light casting long shadows across the walls, my heart racing so fast I could feel it pounding in my chest. I had planned this moment in my head 1,000 different ways, but now that it was about to happen, nothing felt right. My fingers tapped against my knee as I waited, the silence in the room feeling heavier by the second. I couldn't believe I was here again. The massage parlor. Her workplace, apparently. I had gone through so many emotions over the last 24 hours that I barely knew which way was up. Anger, hurt, betrayal. And now, as I waited for her to walk through that door, a kind of bitter anticipation. Last night had been a revelation. I had waited until Emily was fast asleep, breathing softly next to me in bed, and then I did it. I went through her phone. I know some people would say that's crossing a line, that it's a violation of privacy, but after everything I'd seen, after what Tom had told me, I didn't care. I needed to know the truth. My fingers had shaken as I scrolled through her messages. First, I found the ones with the massage parlor. It was all there like a punch to the gut. The shifts, the appointments with VIP clients. And it wasn't just work. These messages were explicit. They weren't talking about deep tissue massages or aromatherapy. It was all about keeping the clients happy, giving them what they paid for. I felt sick reading it, seeing my wife talk about herself like that, like a commodity to be bought and sold. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was finding the other messages. The ones from him. Mike. I didn't know who he was at first, just another name in her phone. But as I scrolled through their conversations, it became painfully clear. He wasn't just a client. He was more than that. There was tenderness in their messages, affection. They weren't just arranging meetings. They were talking late at night, joking, flirting. I read through each text with a growing pit in my stomach. This wasn't just about money for Emily. She had feelings for this guy. It wasn't just sex. It was emotional. I wanted to throw her phone across the room. I wanted to scream, to wake her up and confront her right then and there. But I didn't. I kept my cool somehow. I knew if I blew up now, I wouldn't get the full truth. And part of me still couldn't fully accept it. Maybe there was some other explanation. Maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed. I needed to see it with my own eyes. So I came here to the massage parlor to see what was really going on, to see if Emily, no, Sabrina, as they called her here, would actually walk through that door. The minutes ticked by, and finally, the door creaked open. Emily stepped into the room, her eyes on the ground as she entered, probably expecting another client. She hadn't noticed me yet. When she finally looked up, our eyes met, and she froze. She stopped dead in her tracks, her face draining of color as she realized it was me sitting there, not some random stranger looking for a special massage. "Dubbish, what are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't move. I just stared at her, letting the silence stretch between us until it was unbearable. Finally, I spoke, my voice low and steady, though I could feel the anger simmering just below the surface. "You tell me," I said coldly. "Or should I call you Sabrina now?" She blinked, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find the right words, but nothing came out. She was cornered, and we both knew it. There was no escaping this. We need to talk about this, she finally managed, her voice trembling. Talk, I scoffed. Talk about what? About how you've been lying to me for God knows how long. About how you've been sneaking around behind my back, working in a place like this with clients? I practically spat the word out, my voice rising with each sentence. Emily took a step forward, her hands out as if she was trying to calm me down. It's not what you think, she started, but I wasn't having any of it. Not what I think? I shot back, standing up from the massage table. I know exactly what this is. I've seen the messages, Emily. I know what you do here. VIP clients? Special massages? What the hell is going on with you? Her face twisted in pain as she realized just how much I knew. I was going to tell you. I didn't want it to happen this way. I let out a bitter laugh. Tell me? You were going to tell me? When? After another night of lying to me? After another shift here, pretending you're out running errands? Tears welled up in her eyes, and she opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off. You know what? It's not just about the money, is it? It's not just the work. It's him. Who's Mike, Emily? Or should I say Sabrina? She flinched at the name. It's not what you think, she whispered, her voice cracking. Bullshit. My voice was cold, unrecognizable even to me. You've been talking to him. I read the texts. You're in love with this guy, aren't you? You've been screwing around behind my back with him. She shook her head, the tears now streaming down her face. No, I swear it's not like that. It's complicated. I didn't want to hear any more. The anger was boiling over now, and I couldn't stop myself. Complicated? I roared. No, Emily, it's not complicated. You've been lying to me. You've been cheating on me emotionally, physically, I don't even know anymore. And for what? For some guy you met in this sleazy place? She was sobbing now, but I didn't care. I had said everything I needed to say. Without another word, I turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind me. But as I walked out of that place, rage still burning in my chest, I knew I wasn't done yet. There was something else I needed to do. Something final. I couldn't just let this end here. As I stormed out of the room, my heart still pounding from the argument with Emily, I was seething. The betrayal, the lies, it was all too much. My mind was racing, and I knew I couldn't just leave things like this. Not after everything I'd discovered. I wanted her to feel the consequences, and not just her. I wanted that whole disgusting operation to burn. Before I reached the exit, something caught my eye. A fire alarm button, right there in the corridor. It was like fate had put it there just for me, offering a perfect distraction. I glanced around. Nobody was paying attention. The receptionist had disappeared somewhere into the back of the building, probably dealing with another VIP client. I didn't think twice. I pressed the fire alarm. Immediately, the building erupted in chaos. The piercing sound of the alarm blared through the walls, and within seconds, I saw the receptionist rushing toward the back of the building, shouting something about evacuating. Perfect. They'd be too distracted now to notice what I was about to do. I made my way over to the front desk, where a laptop sat open. It took me less than a minute to sit down and start searching. My fingers flew over the keys, my heart racing even faster than before. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about taking down the whole damn place. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to expose all of it. After a few minutes of digging, I found what I was looking for, the customer data. It was right there, all neatly stored in a folder labeled something innocent like client records. I clicked on it, and there it was, names, phone numbers, appointments. Everything. These weren't just random people coming in for massages. These were powerful men, influential people. I could barely believe what I was seeing. I took out my phone and snapped pictures of the screen, making sure to capture every detail. It only took a few moments, but it felt like forever. Just as I was about to leave, I saw another folder, this one labeled staff. I opened it, and there was again a goldmine of information. Employee records, photos, schedules. Every woman who worked there, including Sabrina. I snapped pictures of those files too. If this place was going down, I was taking every last person involved with it. I slipped out of the building, blending in with the people streaming out due to the fire alarm. The chaos worked in my favor. Nobody noticed me. Nobody had any reason to suspect I'd done anything other than evacuate like everyone else. But I had what I needed, and I was about to set a chain of events in motion that would destroy everything. Later that evening, after I'd calmed down, I knew exactly who to contact. There was a journalist I knew, an old friend who had a nose for stories like this, scandals involving rich and powerful people. He had taken down some big names before, and I knew he'd love to sink his teeth into this. I sent him a message, brief but clear. "I've got something you'll want to see. It's big. Call me." When he did, I laid it all out for him. I didn't mention Emily. No, that part was personal, and I wanted to keep it that way. But I told him everything about the massage parlor, about the VIP clients, the hidden services, and I gave him the data I'd stolen. I told him to sit on it for now, but once the cops raided the place, I wanted it all out in the open. Names, details, everything. He was silent for a moment, then said, "This could make a lot of people very unhappy. But I'll do it." Satisfied, I hung up. The next step was easy. I dialed the number for the police, keeping my voice low, disguising it as best I could. It was an anonymous tip, and I told them everything. The location, the illegal activities, the VIP clientele, and even hinted at how deep this could go. I didn't mention Emily by name, of course. This was about more than just her now. It only took 15 minutes for the police to show up. I watched from a distance as squad cars rolled in, lights flashing. Officers piled out, heading straight for the front door. It was chaos all over again, but this time, it wasn't a drill. This time, it was real. The next few days were a whirlwind. The story blew up fast, thanks to my journalist friend. Once the raid was confirmed, he published everything. It made headlines almost immediately. The place was exposed for what it truly was, a front for prostitution, catering to high-paying clients who thought they could get away with anything. But not this time. The client list went public, and the fallout was swift. Names of politicians, businessmen, even a few local celebrities. They were all dragged through the mud. And as for the owners of that business, they were arrested within days. The police uncovered everything: illegal records, payments under the table, and all the services they had been hiding for years. The whole operation was torn apart, and the people who ran it were sent straight to jail. I should have felt relief, maybe even satisfaction. After all, I had gotten my revenge. The place that had torn my life apart was gone, and everyone involved was facing consequences. But as I sat there, scrolling through the news on my phone, reading about the raid and the arrests, there was a hollowness inside me. Emily, or Sabrina, whatever she wanted to call herself now, was part of that world. And no matter how much destruction I caused, no matter how many people I took down with me, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The fallout from everything that happened was swift and brutal. Once the story hit the news, there was no hiding it. No chance for Emily, or Sabrina as they called her, to explain away the truth. The leaked client list, the police raid, the exposed operation, it was all too much for her to avoid. The scandal wasn't just a local story anymore. People I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, asking if the rumors were true, asking if my wife was part of it. At first, I didn't want to tell anyone. It felt too personal, too raw. But the truth was already out there, and trying to hide from it wasn't going to change anything. Friends, neighbors, even some colleagues found out through the leaks. Her name didn't appear directly in the headlines, but the whispers, the rumors, they spread like wildfire. People talked. Our mutual friends, the ones who had been close to us for years, turned their backs on her almost immediately. They couldn't believe it. Some of them were genuinely shocked, asking me if it was really true. Others were quick to condemn her without even trying to understand. I wasn't sure if they were disgusted by her actions or just afraid of being associated with such a public mess. Either way, they cut her off entirely. Emily became a pariah, and I could see the weight of that judgment crushing her. As for me, I felt numb through most of it. The divorce process moved faster than I expected. Maybe it was because there was no saving face for her after everything came out, or maybe it was because I was so determined to be done with it. Either way, we didn't fight over much. I think we both knew there was no point. Emily tried at first to talk to me, to explain things, to apologize. But I wasn't interested in her explanations. I had already made up my mind. I didn't need to hear why she'd done what she'd done. The betrayal was too deep for me to care about her reasons. We finalized the divorce quietly, and as far as I was concerned, that was the end of it. I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to dwell on what had happened, or what I had done in return. The revenge, the exposure, it had given me some satisfaction, but it didn't undo the damage. It didn't erase the feeling of being betrayed by someone I'd trusted for so long. After the divorce was finalized, I made a conscious decision to move on. I focused on my work, threw myself into staying busy, and tried to rebuild my life piece by piece. I didn't want to be the guy who let a failed marriage define him. I had too much ahead of me to stay stuck in the past. And surprisingly, things got better, slowly at first, but then all at once. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long started to lift. I reconnected with old friends, started going out more, and focused on being there for my kids. They were my priority, and I wanted to make sure they knew that no matter what had happened between their mother and me, I would always be there for them. Life started to look brighter. I felt like I could breathe again, like I wasn't constantly waiting for the next bomb to drop. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore, wondering what secrets were lurking in the shadows. I had faced them all, and I had come out on the other side. People asked me how I was doing, expecting me to be bitter or broken. But I wasn't. I told them I was fine, better than fine, actually, and it was true. I had survived the worst of it, and now I was moving forward. As for Emily, well, I don't know what she's doing now, and honestly, I don't care. We're no longer part of each other's lives, and that's how it needs to be. I've heard bits and pieces from mutual acquaintances. Apparently, she's trying to start over somewhere new, but it's hard to shake the stigma of what happened. She lost a lot in the fallout, and her reputation is probably damaged beyond repair. But that's her burden to carry, not mine. Me? I'm doing well now. I've got a new routine, new goals, and a clearer perspective on what matters. I'm not angry anymore. I don't dwell on what happened. I let it go. So, to anyone reading this, wondering if things ever get better after something like this, they do. It's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. But eventually, you find your footing again. You find yourself again. And to those who stood by me, who didn't turn their backs when the storm hit, thank you. I owe you more than I can say. As for the rest, well, life moves on, and so do I. Good luck to all of you.